Welcome back to episode 30 of the Weekly Boost podcast. Today we are joined by a returning guest, Coach Patrick, to me, Patrick Van Dalik, and of course my co-host Ben Folger. But yeah, episode 30, 30 down, obviously a lot more looking forward to in the future, but we've had a lot of fun guests and we're happy to have you back on the show, Patrick.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys joining me. Thank you.
There it is. And we didn't hold true with what you asked us to do with the hi, how are you stuff.
Yeah, no more.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I didn't actually expect you to.
We were joking before we started recording. Your dog has grown more than our podcast has so far. So congrats to Millie.
Yeah, thank you. Millie's about 3 times the size she was. You saw her last time. So
that's crazy.
Yeah,
it's funny looking back. When did we record? Like end of or beginning of September or something like that. It's been a while, and 26 episodes later. But anyway,
here we are.
Yeah, let's enough with the sappy stuff, right? Yeah. Well, did your how did your basketball season end up? We'll start there because you had talked. I think you were just getting going with open gyms or something, right? Was that back then?
Probably about the time. Yeah, had to have been if it was September because they were still playing volleyball, but we did them in the mornings. Anyways, regular season, we finished 15-5 on the year. So we had a pretty solid year, especially we were picked for our conference, I think 5th or 6th, and we ended up taking 2nd. Randolph is a really good team, and they ended up winning the conference. So regular season was pretty good. Our losses during the regular season were to the number 6 or 7 team in Division III or Division IV. 2 of them to the number 1 team in the state. No, not number 1. I'm sorry. Number 3 team in the state in D5. And then another one to a team that ended up making it to state this year for girls basketball for Division III. So the WIAA reseeded all of the girls basketball teams and boys teams to make an even number of teams per division, so we ended up getting bumped up a division. So we were 15-5 in a 6-team regional, and we got the 5 seed.
Wow.
Yeah. We got bounced in the first round.
That's a big jump though, 6-2, especially I feel like in D4, right? You said D4 initially.
4-3.
Yeah, I'm saying like you're that's a big jump.
Our standings. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was.
Oh my God. So many yeahs.
Give me a yeah.
Yes, it was. No, I don't know. I think we lost. I mean, we had one girl. So our best player ended up winning Conference Player of the Year, and she was pretty much our only returner that had any scoring in her previous statistical history, I guess you could say.
Sure.
I thought we would be better than 5th or 6th in the conference, though, for sure. Personally, I did. Yeah. I just think, obviously, nobody else did. So.
Well, I mean, you got faith in your coaching ability and what you had in front of you for players.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the girls, they do it. The group of girls I had this year were awesome. They do anything that you ask them to do without questioning it, and they played their butts off all year long. Which I think almost every single opposing coach told me as after the game was over. We defended really well. We can't shoot the ball. We shot probably less than 40% as a team on the year, but defensively, I think we kept teams under 30 points for the whole game, probably 8 to 10 times this year.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to feel good too, getting opposing coaches, positive comments about your team and what you're able to do. And I think, well, this is your first year taking it over, or second? Second
year.
So
last year was year 1.
Are you starting to are you able to get like a certain culture into the program now? Or is that still because the first few years, like at any level, I feel like when you take something over, it's hard to get your take on certain things, how things should be done. And I think, like you said, having a moldable, group of players is really, really important. But there are things that are ingrained from, previous coaches or whatever however they learned the game. And I mean,
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's still getting there. The culture aspect that you're asking about, that's going to take a couple more years, I think, to get it fully where I want it. But the leap that we took from last year to this year, I mean, is definitely noticeable girl to girl. Like, so I hold our open gyms, and this is just one small example, but, I mean, you guys both played while I coached at Benny. We played together.
Yeah.
Work ethic and the amount of time that you're willing to put in is a huge thing for me. So I have a small school. I think 260 is our enrollment. It might be even a little less than that, 250. And so like last year, my first year, I hold our open gyms at 6 a.m. in the morning for on school days. And last year we would have always one girl, the girl that won Player of the Year. And then I think the most we ever had show up last year in the morning was probably 4, maybe 5 girls. Okay. This year, I think the least amount of girls we had show up was the Friday morning after the Thursday night of homecoming, so toilet papering. And I think we had 12
Holy
show
cow.
up though. And typically we were anywhere between 14 to 18 girls showing up in the morning for open gyms like that.
6 a.m. Yeah. That's a testament to what you're doing, I feel like, right? I mean,
it's a testament to the girls that they're willing to show up and work. I'm trying to get them to. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's an easy thing to see as a coach. Like, okay, who's here, who's not. And, it's not any. Basic. It might not be causation, but I think it's definitely a correlation between that type of a mentality and seeing success on the court or the field or whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to just be a sport. So,
consistently showing up.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, also with the culture thing, like what I did is, and I did this because it's high school. So they're obviously not just playing basketball all year round. And I don't have them like in the college setting where you can work with them, like college baseball type thing. I took what the previous coach did and I cut some stuff out, but kept some stuff in. So they were familiar with some stuff like tactics wise, and then put some of my own stuff in. And then this year I took more of the old stuff out and added more of my stuff so that they're still familiar, but they're familiar with last year's stuff. And then there's some new stuff rather than just taking 100% of the things and chucking it at them and making it brand new. Because coaching basketball is brand new to me too. Obviously played basketball and stuff, but the whole coaching thing, it's literally like my first basketball coaching experience. So I actually really like it a lot though.
Yeah. You've coached 2 different sports that I kind of know you from. Obviously you coached me in baseball and now you're coaching girls basketball. So, and you've played both of those sports respectively. Which one was the hardest to jump into as being a coach? Like you played baseball for your entire life, you played basketball your entire life. Now you've been a coach or you are a coach in both of them. Which one finds the easier one?
I think I would like to answer that question having come off of both of them. So like coaching baseball, I had just gotten done playing baseball and transitioned right away into coaching baseball. So a lot of the stuff was more fresh in my mind, but some of the stuff that I did coaching wise with baseball, and by I mean we, you guys know what I'm saying. Some of the stuff that we implemented was totally different than what it looked like as a player. So like the kind of education, like educating myself on that kind of stuff, on like drive line and the different plyo cares and different lifting and all that stuff. That was a challenge, but I mean, basketball is a whole different frame of mind, I think, that you're operating from as a coach, especially as a head coach versus a pitching coach. So like in a basketball game, I'm calling offensive sets, what we're doing on defense. I'm drawing stuff up at timeouts, resetting stuff, trying to pull girls aside one-on-one, coach them. Pitching coach wise, it was more just, okay, who's the pitcher, deal with them. Do we need to start getting somebody loose type of a thing? Those were really the only 2 things that you're balancing in there. So last year felt like more of a whirlwind for sure. Which I think is to be expected, but I like, honestly, and this is not just me riding the fence here, I like both of them equally. I do enjoy both of them equally.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think you put that dichotomy well, where the whole whirlwind of transitioning to basketball coaching, like it just moves at such a different pace. And I feel like we talked about this a little bit, like when you first came on, but it's just totally different. In baseball, in a way, is more cerebral in that, like you said, make sure you understand that what this pitcher does, what the game goes, but it does move at a slower pace. And that's what makes, like, being a manager or a coach that makes decisions that are going to affect the game. I feel like that's what makes it more, I don't know how I want to go with this without like polarizing people, but I feel like it makes it more, the decisions are more meaningful in that they're, I don't know, I'm going to stumble over it, but
there's an immediate consequence.
yes. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
like with baseball, like you make a decision and you don't know how it's like, you don't know how that's going to play out. It could, let's say it's, first and second with one out and you bring somebody in and, 3-run bomb and it's a totally different ball game. But it's those systematic, smaller changes in pitch calling or, a defensive substitution. But like in that last minute of a basketball game, that feels like 10 minutes a lot of times. Like things do move quickly. Like if you don't have any timeouts left and you, call for one, just things like that. I feel like it's just so, like you said, they're different, but it, like you said, you like them equally because of those types of things with it.
Yeah. And this is going to kind of lead me down a different road, but I think what you're saying is spot on for sure. But also then as a coach, you got to have that higher level view where what you're saying, like the immediate impact of a decision in basketball, like, yes, that's for sure true, but also the decisions you made prior to that impact what you have available for decisions in that last minute of a game. And I think that's where people in the stands get sucked into like, oh, why'd you do this? Well, you thought it was the right decision at that moment. I mean, it doesn't always pan out. It never will 100% of the time. And that's something I definitely learned this year is to just, and I mean, not only this year, but my eyes were open to it this year from a couple different situations that happened where it's like, you just cannot listen to the outside noise. You gotta, and I told the girls this all season long, especially with everything that's going on with the virus and stuff. There's just so many different possible distractions, like ramped up at an even higher level than what there normally is. And you just got to stay within the group that you have there and keep everything there. Like I tell them all the time, I'm trying to make the best decision possible to put us in the best spot to win a basketball game at any given moment. Sometimes that's going to work. Sometimes it's not. And that's just the reality of the situation. But I think the same's true with baseball, like pitch calling, even on the offensive end. But I mean, I'll just stick with pitching because it's what we're all familiar with. Like the pitch that you decide to throw in a 1-0 count at a level like college baseball level, a pitch that you decide to throw in a 1-0 count definitely impacts what the hitter's thinking. If you get yourself to a 1-2, okay, what is he going to throw me now? You know what I'm saying? Versus, or like, even if you jump bigger picture to at bats, what did he throw me last at bat? Like that impacts your decisions down the road in the same way as basketball does. So
for sure.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, everything compounds and turns into that final, the ninth inning or, the last few minutes and you're right. There's so much, armchair, quarterbacking and coaching that goes on. It's just, I think teaching,
there always will be though. That's not gonna, never change.
I think teaching your players though, to like you put it, like put us in the best position, that doesn't put pressure on people. It's just, we as a team are in the right spot to, make a go at this win or, at the conference, like if you finish second, like, it's incredible. But like, you put yourself in the best position and you've always had that tone of coaching where it's that calm nature, for the most part, as long as we write our goals down and everything. But but like that, I think coaching also is about understanding who you are and what your style is going to be. I saw a video about different coaching styles and the motivator, the one that gets disappointed and doesn't really say much, or I think it's we talk about this kind of stuff all the time, knowing who you are and being authentic, and coaching is no different there. So
no, I'd agree. And at times it's a balance of all those things. Like there's a good time to be pissed off. There's a good time to pick somebody up and motivate them. There's a good time to just stand back, and it's all just about a balance of all those things, I think.
Well, and the first couple of years of coaching, have to imagine. And having, I coached, but it was a few years, and mostly familiar with all the players, and I didn't have a big leadership role on the coaching staff, obviously. But on the flip side, when you have a big role, those first couple of years are probably really tough. And you probably spend a lot of time thinking to yourself, like, I should have done this, or I should have, you know what I mean? Or at least that's how I would do it. Just knowing how I process that.
Sucked into that, but I try and do and last year I stressed myself out a lot more than I did this year, but basketball is a ton of film, which it was nice this year, but also for me as a person I don't know that I'm necessarily a perfectionist, but I would say probably pretty close to it. And with everything going on with the pandemic this year, every single team that you're playing, all of their games are live streamed now. Whereas if you wanted to go scout them, you'd have to either ask for film on Huddle from another coach from another team, or physically travel to the game. Now I could watch. I mean, there were times where I did it this year. You can watch 3 different teams on a single night that's coming up on your schedule. But at the same, in terms of workload, that adds a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's at least for me, to keep myself in a position where I feel like I'm ahead of things, it's okay, do I have to watch this game? No, but I can. So I probably should, type of a thing.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. Again, it's about finding the balance of okay, I've done enough for the day, type of a thing. But I don't know.
I kind of want to. There was something that you guys were talking about earlier about the compounding situations, right, at the end of a baseball game or end of a basketball game. I don't want to keep bringing up the idea of the NFL postseason, right? But stuff in that situation or in that series of games kind of impacted my life in a way that made me realize certain things outside of sports matter a little bit. But when we look at the grand scheme of things, especially with sporting events, because how prevalent they are in our lives, you have the people that say, oh, why didn't you do it this way? Or why did you make that decision? Right. You have Matt LaFleur kicking a field goal kind of a thing. And, that game, or you have, why did you give this person the puck with 15 seconds left in the third period? Why did you do that? And the idea of that compounding event that happens in the game, right? The game wasn't determined, or the event wasn't determined by a single action. It was the culmination of events throughout the entire game. And as a coach, I've never coached anything, but I've been obviously a part of sports, and I've seen, coaching styles and personalities and stuff like that. For me, I was able to relate that to life, how you're in the spot that you're at right now because of a compounding series of events coming together and making you who you are. And so single-handedly pointing out certain situations that may or may not have impacted you in a way that made your life for better or worse. It's a cornucopia. We have to look at everything as a culmination. Are you mad that I said cornucopia, Ben?
No.
Oh, okay. No, disappointed.
No. That was a slow blink. I was
oh, wow. I'm really going off the rails.
He's falling asleep.
Patty, you have time for a podcast every week?
Yeah.
But Fox, what you're
I just think it's a great thing. Sports do these really cool things where they point out things in life that are bigger than sports, but you learn the lesson from it. I feel like every time we have somebody with sports on, we talk about that. But hey,
what you're saying though, that's why sports are such a great teaching tool for life, because at the end of the day, nobody gives a shit if the 2020-2021 Marquezine Hornets girls basketball team lost in the first round of the regionals or not. Nobody's going to remember that in the year 2037. Yeah. But life has more. The choices, the decisions that you make on a moment by moment basis in life have more of an impact in terms of importance on where you end up, what happens to you, where you're going. But, but it's the same thing as a sports game though. There's definitely moments and single decisions and single plays that are bigger than others.
Exactly.
But you'll never see a result be I'm trying to say this in my head here. You will never see the result of the game, the ending point of a game, be the result of just a single decision.
Exactly.
And I think that's maybe where sports and life differ only, is that you can see the result of somebody's life as a result of a single decision, like the end point or whatever you want to call it, something monumental.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
I don't know. It's like a practice.
Yeah, like you lose the game 5-1, right? We're talking baseball here just to keep it in context.
Yeah.
Lose the game 5-1, but you had 9 innings worth of, of a game to score 4 runs to tie it or 5 runs to win it.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
Right?
You had the bases loaded in the 9th. Like, totally.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole series of events that take place before the event in which a decision can be made upon that mattered, and I'd get upset about, the couch quarterbacks, armchair quarterbacks kind of thing, or like the people that like, well, coach should have did this, or, that player should have did this. Well, we can all say those things because we're obviously sitting on the futon, right? We're sitting on the couch. We're not actually in the game. We're not doing that sort of stuff. But then mapping it to real life, how often can you sit down and say, well, I'm here where I am now because of a single decision? Like, I don't think that really, I don't know how.
Honestly, maybe people that are incarcerated.
That's probably like one of the only situations where I can say like a single decision could completely, change the course of your life.
But also too, like with what you're saying about the armchair quarterbacks, I always would love to know, and these are the people that I would respect, because I think that there's people that are this way. So if any given scenario that you're talking about right now, and the result is not in the favor of whoever the armchair quarterback is cheering for, well, they should have done this. Well, if the decision that the coach made ended up and the team won, would you still have said,
exactly.
I think they should have done this?
Yeah.
If you can say that, then yes. Okay, because that's just your opinion. Yeah. But man, look at me. I'm 28 years old. I know everything. I figured the whole thing.
Incredible, dude. Like, congrats.
We're all guilty of
like that's why we're having you on twice, right?
Yeah. We're all guilty.
You just need to tap into.
Don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No. A good example of that just came up, and this will transition to kind of where we wanted to go. Really good segue. Is that huge extension Fernando Tatis signed?
Oh yeah.
I mean, 14 years. Like
14 years.
He's a Padre for life, unless
340, I think.
Yeah, right around there.
That's close to like 60% of his life. Or like he isn't. Like the contract he's going to have is almost 60% of his total life that he's living right now. If that makes sense. Like he's only 22.
What is he? He's only like 22, right?
Yeah, like 22 years old or something like that. So it's pretty close
340.
So
it's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah. And people were like, oh yeah, he's not going to get a single ring there. Or like maybe the guy loves San Diego or maybe he loves the idea of a team being built around him. Like that's,
I don't know, man. The Padres are legit though.
That's going to be a crazy NL West. I hope. And I hope the Padres.
I hope it'll be fun.
I hope the Padres get win the division. Granted, I think the Dodgers are going to win 110 games, but you know what I mean. Like it's nuts, and we can get into that too with money and how crazy the lack of salary or the luxury tax for teams are. But go ahead.
No, I'm happy you brought it up because I think we're in a time in our lives as obviously young adults getting into sort of where our careers are. We're starting to branch away from the idea of long-term tenure at a place. I think that was something that, 30, 40, 50 years ago, being at the same job for 26, 27 to 30 years was absolutely phenomenal. You were loyal, you were a dedicated worker to your craft and whatnot. And maybe the passion's still there for most people that identify with that, but sometimes it was just means to an end, like kind of like that's what they had to do to provide for their family. But flash forward to 40 years to present day, you're seeing less and less people feel comfortable with that long-term tenure, right? They don't want to feel stagnant. They don't want to be in a constant position. They want to look for improvement in other places. And I'll get to this.
I just want to say this because I know I'm going to forget it. I think about this though, what you're saying. And I wonder if that's a result or a small result of how connected we are as human beings to everything. So like and even just a normal job. If I'm working a normal job in Wisconsin and I could take one in Arizona, back before the internet and everything, it would be like, oh man, I've never even been there. Like, what does it look like? And now you can within 5 minutes have a rundown of the city that you might be living
places
in.
to eat, apartments available, like everything around, you'd be able to look at it.
I'm guilty of that.
like I bring it up because
I guess
we
so,
talked about
how many?
LinkedIn a couple episodes ago, but like I'm looking at people's profiles and seeing like experiences, like work experiences, education experiences, and places are people are having 10 plus experiences for shorter amounts of time, when obviously if you add it all together, it's 8 years of their life, right? Like, and you could see that 30-40 years ago, 8 years of life at a single company, right? Building their name, building their brand, who they are as an employee for that company. Whereas now it's more of a building your brand for who you are as a potential worker for the next job, not a potential worker that stays at the job for their entire career and retires from there. I don't think it's a bad or good thing. It's something that just, it's a thing, right? It's evolving with who people are and what society is. And for a teacher, I think that's something, I don't want to say that there's concrete like foundation in that, but I feel like we'll always need teachers, and like that prospect of having a teacher position. I'm not a teacher, so I can't really speak to this. Maybe you guys, because you're going through this stuff, but the idea that people need to be educated, people need to have that insightful intellect. Oh, wow. That's an alliteration. Insightful intellect instilled in their minds from people. I think that'll be a pretty good tenured position, a career path that people feel comfortable being in. But like, I don't know how valid the statistic is, but people change their profession or career like 13 times or something like that in their life. I could be just spewing a number out. I don't know, but I know some people do. I know it's a lot. Like I know my dad, he's worked at the same company for 26 years, I think now. Like he's sort of a part of that, long-term tenure. And like my mom has switched, I think, different working types of jobs. She was a dental assistant for a while. She's like a marketing publisher right now. So like a dental assistant to marketing publisher, like where does that transition come from? We don't know. It's, that constant need for progress. And
I think it's cool too. One of the cool parts about that, and this is, I mean, what you're saying with your mom, but for me too, from experience, is like people are now more willing to give you a chance type of a thing. Like where somebody who is a dental assistant came up to somebody in marketing and said like, hey, I want to work with you. They'd been like, what?
You lost?
Yeah. Like you lost the map. Like where you at?
Yeah. But I mean, like same thing for me though. Coaching and teaching aren't that different of things, but being a director of operations at a baseball academy and then going and teaching high school English, I mean, those are not, aside from communicating with other people, not really that different. Not really even close in the same ballpark. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's a positive for sure.
I think Austin mentioned this. We were talking one day, and you need 3 years of experience, but this is an entry level job, like stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think that still persists, but I think Austin hit it right on the head where you're building, qualities for yourself, not necessarily for what that company is. And I think that's a really big shift that, like you said, happened in the past 30 years. My mom's the same way. And my dad is too. Like they both endured a significant shift in what they were doing. Significant enough, like totally different, fields. But I think that, like you said, it's just super common of today. But a lot of that, like you said, Patty, is being connected. I was able to look around where, this community, what this would look like. And, I gambled on an apartment and I love it. Like,
you literally moved there without ever being to the, like, you're that prime example of, because the internet was there, you were able to, make
like granted, if the pandemic wasn't going on and, travel wasn't really advised, but I would have came, but it's still, you can just walk the streets,
a lot more Street View.
Yeah, exactly. Austin, you wanted to talk about education. I think you brought up a really good point.
I kind of just hit on a little bit, but I think we're getting to a time, kind of reiterating what I said before, we're trying to build a brand for who we are as individuals, and I think a lot of that starts with what we actually know in comparison to like how we can go about doing what we know, if that makes any sense. Like for me, I'm taking a class at Johns Hopkins. Ben, you kind of brought that up, but like it's about epidemiology, public health stuff. That's not necessarily what I want to do with my career, but it's similar enough for me to get behind it and feel somewhat passionate about it. But like I also did, I still volunteer as an aquaculture technician. And that's, again, another thing that's similar to what I want to do, but not really it. and you have people, well, I myself included, are resume builders. Like you want to be able to say the most about you as possible that gives you accreditation for potential employer, potential, higher education, wherever you want to go. And I think that's the status quo. That's the norm now, is you want to build as broadly as you can who you are as a person to show to people. And Patty, you said it perfectly, because we're connected. Like, I don't think it would matter as much 30 years ago if I was an aquaculture technician, if I was applying to be, at working as a lab tech at a cancer research facility out west. Like, it wouldn't matter. But nowadays you can see that, you can look up the website for the aquaculture program and be like, oh, hey, they do this, and this. It counts as volunteer hours. Like, all these sorts of things that you can do now that you're connected. Kind of, for me, reiterates the idea that education, or just diversifying your skill set, matters. Yeah, I think
gaining different experiences in different areas.
Yeah, and
I think that's important.
Yeah. So that was just me. That's what I had for that one.
Yeah, that's my answer. Yeah, I'm sure that drew you to teaching, Patty. The constant learning and being able to help people, help students in their quest for knowledge, basically, whether by choice or, if they're being forced to learn. Because I feel like you get not problem students, but students that are not as into learning as, say, Austin is with his stuff.
Yep. Especially in a high school setting where they have to be there. Versus,
exactly.
That was hard. Yeah. The have to be there part. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I love learning, but the have to be there.
Yeah.
It took away the fun out of it. Like, for what I'm doing now with school, like I don't have to go to school. Like, I pay for it, so take advantage of it. But I think the have to be there part, like, that's a struggle for a lot of students. I think.
It is for sure. Yeah. You can see it on their faces. But I mean, not that these are my ultimate goals as a teacher, because they're not by any means, but two goals that I try and accomplish. And I think not 100% successful by any means, but relatively successful with it is, can you take something? So for me, it's in the context of the English classroom, which I think the part that I enjoy most about that is there's a lot of, obviously you've got the Common Core, the state standards that you're following in a classroom. But if you compare English to a class like math, there's a lot more freedom with what you're doing in an English classroom compared to like a math classroom, or even science, like especially at the high school level, where it's like, okay, by this grade, they need to know that, like, meiosis. They need to know meiosis by the end of 11th grade type of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, but you can control the materials that you're exposing them to, which is a blessing and a curse. But if they can take that and internalize it and maybe shift their perspective on something, so think about something a little bit differently, and then also get them to take it and apply it to their own lives, which I don't even mean that in terms of like their own academic lives. I'm just saying like their own life. I think that's a wonderful thing to see. And then maybe even have a little fun while doing it.
Yeah. For English, I briefly or vaguely remember, I don't briefly remember, but like there were core themes that had to be taught, but again, very loose, right? Like you'd have a month of feminism, like learning about that feminism in literature, or like westward expansion in literature. And like, it's just, you're given a broad theme and you make the decision, oh, well, okay, I'm going to read, I don't really know books for either of those, like The Color Purple, maybe for like the feminism thing, or like, insert another book. Like the Scarlet Letter or something like that.
Aside from my AP literature class, though, with my classes, we really only do one class novel a year. The rest of them are like short stories, poems, articles, stuff like that, in order to try and get to kids, first of all, to get them exposed to as many things as possible, because it takes you forever to get through a book as a class, but also to hopefully hit an area of interest for every kid in that room type of a thing. And then I did this thing this year too, where we switched to a block schedule. So I got the kids for an hour and a half every day, which another blessing and a curse, but I'm having each student in every single one of my classes is reading an independent novel, and we're doing one per quarter. So ideally they'll have read 4 books of their own choosing by the end of the year. I literally just take them to the library and I'm like, it has to come from the high school section of the library. I do not care what it's about, who it's by, if it's fiction, nonfiction, whatever, but you just got to give a presentation on it at the end of the quarter and basically let me know that you read the book. And I think that's been pretty cool at first, because, you know, you get the kids, especially high school age kids, where it's like, oh, I don't want to read. And then, but I give them class time to do it. So that's like, because we're split virtual and in person, I'll start the first 10 minutes of my classes trying to get everything in order, like just reminding kids of missing work, taking attendance, all that stuff. In those 10 minutes, it's called independent reading time. So you have your book, you come to class with it, and you start reading it. I mean, prime example, and by no means am I saying this is because of me, but it wouldn't have happened if that system weren't in place. One kid that I have, super reluctant reader, and I mean, just one of those kids where school's not for him. You know, they know that they're not going to a 4-year college. They know what they're going to do with the rest of their life. They're going to be fine. I mean, it's not like they're in a bad place. It's just that the education, they just know it at this point too, because they're old enough to realize it. But would fall asleep almost every time independent reading. And last week, I think it was, maybe the week before last week, I gave them we did an article that correlated with the story that we read, and then I had them write a half page or more reflection. And this kid sat down, wrote 1 full page in their notebook, a full page, handwritten, closed up his notebook. We had about 10 or 15 minutes left of class, and I was watching him. And the next thing he did is close his notebook, set it off to the side, grabbed his book, and sat down and started reading. And then at the end of that class period, like, I didn't say anything to him because I mean, it was awesome, but I didn't want to be like, make him embarrassed. And at the end, everybody walks out and he's like walking out of the room. He's like, hey, if you want to read a good book, you should read this book. And he like held it up. And this kid's literally telling me at the start of the year, he's like, I've never read a book in my life. I don't want to read. And like, I mean, it's kind of cool to see, because how else are you going to, especially once you leave an institution like the education system where you're on your own, aside from your job, how are you going to expand your horizons, and how are you going to keep accomplishing that and growing as an individual? You got to read or listen. I don't care. I give all the kids that I have in my room an option for the audiobook for everything. So all the students have Chromebooks now this year, which we did not last year. And I mean, that's awesome, because now the kids that I make them read along with it, but the kids that, I mean, I was in the same boat when I was in their shoes, which I tell them too. It's like, if this is something I know I don't want to read, but I have to read it, I have a tough time like staying into it as it's going. So I just give them all the audiobook link. I'm like, if you want to throw headphones on and listen while you read, that's totally fine. Like, go ahead and do it, because it'll help you to hear it rather than read it. So I don't know, just different stuff like that. But that's a lot different than when I was in school. I mean, I know that, and I'm not that old. It's a lot different than when I was in high school, but that's how it is now.
I think it just gives a good opportunity for options, right? Like what we were just talking about, the having to be there aspect of, you know, primary education. Like, it's tough because you're not invested in a way that you are when you actually have to put your own money in, or you have to put, you know, time that isn't required by the state or the federal government, right? Like, it's different. And so that, I just love the option of the audiobook thing, because for me, I had a tough time, as much as I like doing this stuff now, I had a tough time for those like mandatory readings, because you know, if it wasn't something that I was interested in, why allocate the time to it? But like, audiobook option now would have been just the biggest blessing. I would have you know, been as attentive and like everything as I could be, because there was just a different way for the, you know, the source to get to me. And I think it's a good thing for education in general, just options. I think it's great.
That's education. Well, that's not only just education, but I mean, being in a position of authority in general is just give and take. Like, so like, use the independent novel thing as an example. My absolute that there's no negotiating on is you're reading a book. You're going to read a book. That's my take, I guess. The give is, I'm not telling, like, just pick one. It can be about anything that you want it to be about. And so, you know, you got most of the guys reading sports books or car books or in our community, like farming books or like outdoor type, like hunting books type of thing. That's totally fine with me as long as you're just reading. You know, but
yeah.
I
Engage with
definitely,
the material.
I had some teachers in high school that would have been like, hey, no, you need to read a fiction book from that was published in the year 1910 to 1917. And that's what you got to do. And then you'd come to them and they'd be like, hey, this book was written in 1920. And they'd be like, nope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
experienced that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
That leads me into my wild card question that I kind of prefaced off the air. Is there a book? So you kind of clearly laid out your stance with how you are on assigning books, but other than like what's required,
Other than the class novel.
Yeah. So like, this will be a 2-part question. And I want to hear Austin. No. I want to hear Austin's take too. Like, did you have a favorite book that you remember reading in an English class or something that like really piqued your interest? And I guess this goes with it. Like, are you required to use it in your classes today, or is there one book that you assign that you feel like is a really good one class wide, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So if I had to pick a book from school that still hits home with me, it's probably either To Kill a Mockingbird or Grapes of Wrath. Grapes of Wrath I read really young, though. I think I was a freshman. We read it in freshman honors English, and I didn't fully comprehend all of the basically like the political commentary behind it, behind Grapes of Wrath at the time, but I still thought it was a good book. To Kill a Mockingbird, really good book, though. That one.
Yeah.
And the teacher that I had that we did that book with, really good teacher. So he did a really, his name was Mr. Godfrey. He did a really good job of breaking it down and just giving it to you in a relevant way, I guess.
Yeah.
Both of the books that so with my AP literature class, I do The Great Gatsby we did to start the year. And that, I like that story, but that's more of just like just a classic book. You know what I mean? Like, and the things that's going to be asked of you on the AP Lit exam, possibly to respond to. So the reason why we're doing those is because question number 3 out of the 3 essay questions on the AP Literature exam is a question, but you have to base your answer on something that you've read. It can be anything. So I make them do the independent novels, and then we're going to do 2 class novels in a play. So by the end of the year, they'll have 7 things that they can choose from to answer that question with. Great Gatsby, especially with like characterization and just like plot development, even setting and stuff like that, could allow you to answer that question from like any of those perspectives based on just that book type of a thing. So I think that's why we did that. But I just started Brave New World with them, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with that book, but you should both read it. It's like 1984. It's a dystopian novel. And it was written in, man, I cannot remember off the top of my head. 1930, I think.
1931.
Yeah, there you go.
Published in 32.
So some of the stuff that he is making his commentary on is just crazy how accurate it is today.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 class novels that I do, so I'm not picking one, Ben. I'm just talking about all of them.
I love that. Yeah.
The other 2 class novels that I do with my juniors, it's called The Glass Castle, and the teacher that I had previously been in my position said that she always did it with the class and they really enjoyed it. And it's a tough book to read. It's about a girl who is brought up in extreme poverty. Her father's abusive, an alcoholic. They're moving around from town to town. And it's just a memoir. So it's her life story. And I do that just because, again, just to try and shift perspective, especially in a community like Marquezan where it's population 1,000, you know, obviously that stuff happens, but it's not as prominent in a community, like the numbers. So it's like, just open their eyes about stuff that's happening outside of Marquezan. And then the book I do with my freshmen is called Speak. You guys probably might have read it, but I remember reading it when I was in, I think, late middle school years. And it's another tough read, but a good read about a girl who doesn't fit in high school. It's her freshman year of high school. And the reason why she doesn't fit in is because she was at a party the summer before her freshman year of high school. And she called the cops, and there was drinking going on at the party. It's not a true story. It's a fictional story, but she called the cops, and the party got busted, and all of like the popular kids got in trouble for it. And that's how she starts her high school career. So again, that's kind of a parallel to the freshmen's lives. Like they're starting their freshman year of high school type of thing. So they can put themselves in her shoes. And I mean, there's a few of those kids, not like the juniors or the seniors though, where it's like, oh man, I'm going to like look into this book and do some research on it and read ahead type of a thing. So they're all like, what pages do we have to read? Again, not all of them, but most of them. So they're all just assuming that this girl's a snitch for about 3/4 of the party, or I mean, the book. And then you find out that the reason why she called the cops at the party is because a senior guy, while she was headed into 9th grade, actually like raped her at the party. And she didn't know what else to do. So she just called the cops, but didn't say anything to them. And then the cops just showed up and busted the party. So that's like a huge perspective shift for them. It's really cool. We're not to that part of the book yet, but like last year when I did it with my freshmen, you could see those kids just like all of a sudden it was like, whoa, type of, like it was like a whoa moment for them as individuals. And I don't know, that's pretty cool. I think that's what it's all about more so than what'd you get on your state standardized test.
Absolutely.
Oh man, don't get me started about that.
Well, the reason that I kind of wanted to ask and gain your insight, not going to say the perspective word, I
just did it.
That's okay. Is because I remember reading, have you read Native Son?
Yes.
You have?
I think so. I actually think I did.
Really?
Who's it by?
Can you
Richard Wright?
Can you do a little synopsis for me?
Basically there's a 20-year-old named Bigger Thomas.
Yep. I remember that.
And it's just, it's the reason why I bring it up is because it's come up twice in my grad school books. And every time it's like, well, have you, like, who here has read it? And obviously I raised my hand both times, but it's something that I think like you said with Grapes of Wrath, I was too young when I read it to fully understand what was going on. Because when you are in high school, let's say you take, especially in your early studies, and I think I read this junior year, but you take that, what the events in the book, the plot, like literally, and you don't like look too much further in. You're just getting to page 25 so you can, finish these questions.
Pass your reading quiz.
Exactly.
So you can play video games later.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's
But it's really this like monumental commentary on race relations in the 40s and or in the 30s rather, and it's just, I would recommend reading it. But
it's a good book. Now that you keep bringing it up, I remember it was.
I really want to read it again now that I am almost 25, and have a African American historiography course, not halfway done, but I'm in it now. But it's just like things like that you get exposed to, like you said, in high school. And I know we always talk about getting exposed to things in college and take, like Austin said, take a philosophy class a couple episodes ago, or, take these classes that are going to broaden your
music
horizon.
appreciation.
It all reverts back to what we talked about, is building those skills that are going to make you want to pick up a book in 10 years and you think, wow, like, what's this? Or you develop those skills that are going to be able to give you critical thinking. So when you have to make a decision in an election, or if you have to, make a tough decision at work, you can understand what you're getting yourself into. And I think as simple as reading, a novel that was published, 80 years ago would do.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm not ignoring you. I'm adding this book to my wish list, or my whatever Kindle reading list. Was this a movie?
It was. I haven't seen the movie, but the original was written by Richard Wright, and then he also wrote. I'm gonna blank on the name. I think it's.
Oh, dude, I definitely watched this movie.
Oh,
I 100% watched this movie. I just had no clue it was a book.
I don't remember when I read it, but I did, and I think it was in like probably English honors or something, like my senior high school English class or whatever. But I mean,
But regardless, like there's all these underlying things, and it's interesting to, like when I'm reading like history books, when they develop this narrative of a history of this or that, they use literature a lot. There's a book I read about Tambora when that erupted in the early 19th century, and how big of an impact, and that the weather patterns you can see in Frankenstein, like Shelley's Frankenstein. It's just really interesting how literature gets used in historical research. And I saw something the other day. It was like, how do these like English teachers know that this was symbolism for this or this, which is kind of funny. But I think understanding and engaging with the literature and content, like we talked about, is really important to making sure you keep learning throughout life, because that's what it's all about. Like life's got so much to offer you. And if you just sit on by, and this isn't a knock to anybody that spends a long time in an industry, because they learn things there too, obviously. But it's what Austin said a while back. It's these new opportunities and experiences to keep learning, and that's what makes it interesting. So
I did not know that history has that much reference to literature, but I guess it kind of makes sense. But what you said with how they're always saying, how do English teachers know or whatever, that just symbolizes that's one of the best parts about the subject for me, is like, you don't know, you're just pretty sure. But like, change my mind.
Exactly. It's the whole idea about like science and like theories and understanding and like doing experimentation. It's not that we're proving anything to be right. We're we're rejecting rejections. We're like kind of just building upon the idea that, okay, well, it's not that, but we still don't know that it is this, but we know it's not that. So that's one of my favorite parts about just literature in general. Before I get into my pick from my high school book, but just the idea that it could mean something completely different to the next person than what you thought it was, but the book still did its job of getting you to critically think and getting you to understand, how can this relate to me? How can it relate to society? How can it relate to the foundations of that society that we interact with every day?
There's like probably once a month in my classes, maybe even a little bit more often than that, where we'll be discussing something that we read, and a kid will say something, and I'll be like, wow, I had not thought of it like that, like at all. And I mean, I'll be open with them about that though, where it's not like in my head, I'm like, oh crap, I didn't know that type of a thing. I'm the teacher. I'll be like, holy cow, that's a great perspective. And I think that's part of the culture of the classroom that I try and establish, where it's like, hey, throw your ideas out there. Like, they're not bad ideas, you guys. I don't know everything, type of a thing. But anyway, it's your book.
Sorry, I'm gonna interject real quick. For students, like, that's a really, like, if I were to do that, it's like, hey, like, I knew something, or I was able to challenge ideas, and it gets them to keep, those. Your education path is full of those types of moments where you're like, oh, you make those connections on your own, and the teacher's like, oh, like, that's like a really interesting way of looking at it. I hadn't thought about that. You're right. Or, I think that's it keeps kids involved and engaged, and keep going throughout their
and unfortunately path. I don't know why at the high school level this seems to be more prominent than college. Maybe it's just because of the age, but I feel like the mentality too often from the kids, the vibe that I'm getting from the kids is like, hey, like, tell me type of a thing, or like, you're 100% correct because you're the person that's the teacher. And that's the opposite of what education and the experience should be, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's exactly like what Fox is saying, where it's like, science is like, you're rejecting this idea, but we don't know if it's this, but we think it might be this type of thing. How else are you gonna arrive at a logical and correct, in air quotes, conclusion, other than that type of collaboration right there? You can't just have one person sitting there telling you this is how it is. I mean, are there certain circumstances where that's the case? Yes. But I mean, that's how you progress, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
Austin, go. So before we interrupt again.
No, my book doesn't.
Hold on. What I was going to say, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
My book doesn't really offer a lot of societal commentary. It was just something for me that reinvigorated my desire to be in the sciences. And for me, that was reading Hot Zone about Ebola coming out of sub-Saharan Africa, my bad. And just learning about what it actually takes deal with that sort of thing. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hot Zone. They've made it into like a little HBO miniseries too. They've also had a spin-off movie called Outbreak. For me, it completely made sure that I didn't want to go into history. Nothing against history. I love it. Ben, you do it. Like, it made sure that I knew I want to be a scientist because this stuff is pretty cool. Like, these individuals work for the United States military in a bio-level safety 4 research, handling the most deadly pathogens that have no cure. Like, how is that not entertaining? Like, how is that not cool? I mean, it's deadly. It's, it's the passions that it
invokes.
Thank you. Word of the day, invokes. There you go. The passions that it invokes aren't something that you get to experience every day, right? Like, there's not too many times where you can walk into a biosafety level 4 lab, in a air suit and handle something that has caused more, destruction than you can even conceptualize. And so that was it for me. And I still to this day think that book is for the high school classes that I took that taught with that book, it was one of the most refreshing parts of being a scientist, because you don't get to sit down too often and read a book about, viruses that actually pertains to the lecture that you just had about viruses. Like, I'm not saying that this is universal, but in history, right, you can read a book about a historical event and then have just actual historical records that explain that event, and then have, firsthand accounts that explain that event, and all these sorts of media sources, these mediums for communication to kind of get that idea across about history, or, for example, literature. Like, there's obviously books written about books, reviews and stuff, but like, you have a textbook that can teach you about viruses, and you can have a professor that read that textbook teach you about viruses, or you can go to the doctor. Like, there's not really too many primary resources for you to understand these sorts of things. And then you have a book come out. I know it's a secondary resource for this situation, but it was just, it changed my perspective. There it is for the 4th time, but it made an impact that kind of put me where I'm at today. And I know it was as simple as a, junior high school course teaching me about biology that taught me that, but they're powerful. Books are powerful.
They are. Have you ever read, I know this is a different area of science than I think what you're doing, Boxy, but have you ever read any of Brian Greene's books about like theoretical physics, basically?
Maybe.
And it's like string theory and quantum mechanics and stuff?
Probably not. No,
I had a high school teacher that made us read those in my physics class, and that talk about a shift in perspective, not in terms of like inspiring me to be a physicist, but
did it help or did it hinder? Like, did it help or hinder your pursuit of wanting to learn about that in the class? I guess, like, did that matter?
In the class, well, so I don't know. I just wanted to learn it. I never didn't want to in class. I guess but like, in terms of like just my viewpoint on the world and stuff, and like how I don't know, infinitesimal we are as human beings in perspective of the universe, that really opened my eyes.
That actually, talking about English classes, because I don't know why I've been thinking about this, but when we were in the I can't even say it. I'm just gonna say romanticism.
Transcendentalism.
Yeah,
transcendentalism.
That's a nice word for me to not be able to pronounce.
That's okay.
But the ideas that came out of that era for me were like the most intriguing in an English course, because it like made you realize that, obviously nature dominates everything in that era, right? Like, there's obviously, but in that, for me, I'm a naturalist, I guess, kind of thing. Like, I love reverting back to the outdoors, all this sort of, granola, right? And I can't remember, I think, Emerson's stuff is pretty good. But
Ralph Waldo.
There's a painting
David Thoreau.
There's a painting that I want, obviously not the real thing, but like a replica of, but the man standing on the mountain overlooking. I don't know if you guys can picture this in your head, but it's something out of that era. It's a really big painting. I don't remember what it's called, but just that idea that I took that English class when I was 17 years old. I mean, that's only 5 years ago, but that kind of identifies who I am as a person today. And I think when we talk about how important education is, just in the grand scheme of things, it relates back to who you are as a person more than you think. Like,
it shapes you as long as you let it shapes who you are as a person.
because we're that idea.
You gotta have to let it though first, but
yeah, it's hard to let it, but once you do, you realize it, because it comes full circle. It's not about really what you know, it's how you apply it to who you are and your life, because like you can sit down and win your friends $100 gift cards at a trivia night at a bar every weekend, just because theory of relativity, like all the information about it. I know that's kind of hard to trivialize, but stuff like that. But how does that relate to you? And then you say, I don't know. That's like the difference between book smart and street smart, that argument too.
Yeah.
That kind of presents itself in a lot of the conversations I have.
Are you street smart, Fox? Would you consider yourself
not at all
smart? Okay.
But I'm not book smart either, because I don't.
Shut up.
Austin,
no, in the sense that I'm thinking like book smart for me is like being able to read information in a textbook or a book and completely regurgitate it and just be like, yeah, I know this, like, because I read it.
That's not book smart. That just means you can memorize shit.
Oh, well, that's how I interpret book smart. But then like street smart is like being able to know what, I don't even know. But
okay, well, let's get into
the most non-street smart answer.
Thank you.
Yes.
Let's get into our break. In the meantime, Austin can look up The Wanderer Above the Mists and report back to us to see if that's what it is.
Sounds like it would be right.
Yeah, sounds like we'll come back with some Poddex questions, and then we'll close out Patty's second appearance on the Weekly Boost. So was that in fact the right painting, Austin?
Yeah, okay. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's
what's it called? What's it called again?
Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog.
Mist? The Mist?
Or Sea of Fog. It's a dual name. Duality of Change. Come on,
one of our greatest episodes.
Yeah, by far.
So
boy,
we pre-picked these for Patty, hoping that he'll have some good answers for it.
For those of us not listening, they're question cards.
Yeah, sorry.
If you're not listening.
If you're not listening, because you
Jesus.
Okay, so if you're following along, a lot of times we'll introduce our pod decks back into the show. We're still sponsored by them, so if you want to check us out on there, and if you have a podcast of your own, you can incorporate them. They got a lot of good decks for you. This comes from Interview 2nd edition. So, Patrick, who would you most like to sit next to on a 10-hour flight, and why?
Man.
You don't have to say us for our ego's sake.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So who's number 3?
Ben and I will duke it out for the top position.
He's got the reach on me, so I don't know if.
That's all right. You make up for it in spunk. Man, that's tough. There's probably a handful of people. I feel like this has become a cliche answer now, but Elon Musk, I would love to. I don't know if he'd talk to me though. I feel like he'd be too busy working. So
or he just
probably pick somebody else.
Dogecoin.
I would love to
to the moon.
To the moon.
That's where the flight's going. So.
Oh man. I would love to sit next to Theo Epstein for that long and just talk baseball with him. I think maybe Joe Madden would be on that list for the same reason. I guess though, if you want me to branch out and not go somebody like stereotypical,
it's your answer, man. You can do whatever you want with it. It's your show too, apparently. Like, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys joining me. It's good to have you back. Yeah, we'll just leave those answers there.
I think that's good there.
I like that.
I've got a whole list of people.
They're philosophical baseball characters, right? They have more than just baseball philosophy on the brain. So that's kind of like right up your alley. Yeah, good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer.
I mean,
good answer.
I guess maybe Mike Malone. He's the Nuggets basketball coach.
Okay.
He's kind of like a forward-thinking basketball mind. So
sure,
that would be interesting.
So this is your second year as an English teacher.
Mm-hmm.
What's the funniest thing you've seen a kid do?
Okay, that's a really good question. I've got 2 of them that stand out in my mind, so I'm going to give them to you both.
All right.
One, last year, I had a student come up to me and ask me if I would date his mom because he thought I would be a good dad. And the second thing, not too long ago, this is a couple weeks ago, we were reading in class and I was helping a virtual kid on my computer, so I just wasn't looking. And the kid that sits next to my desk, like 3 feet away from me, fell asleep reading, and he was on his hand and elbow. Slipped off the table, banged his head off the desk, and tipped completely out of his chair. And his feet were both up in the air, and he fell asleep. Man,
he's good though, right? I mean,
oh yeah, I asked him, and he's like, I think so, because I didn't know if he fell asleep or if he like legitimately like passed out. So I was like, you like, did you fall asleep? He's like, oh yeah, I fell asleep. I was like, okay. Probably the first one that was funnier though. The kid coming up to me and asking if I would consider dating his mom.
Amazing.
All right, so number 3, I picked out, what is something you hate but wish you loved? For me, I've never been a big wine person. I know it gets paired with, you know, certain meals to enhance, you know, your palate, and you get a better experience of the meal as a whole, but I just never got into it. Is there something like that for you?
Does enhancing my palate count as an answer? I'll just eat the food.
Sure.
No, I'm just kidding. What's something I hate but wish that I loved? You know, I'm not one, this might come as a surprise to you guys, but I'm not one that enjoys like kind, casual conversation with another person that I don't really know that well, but I'll do it.
I hate small talk.
I just hate it. I hate small talk. And then as soon as I walk away, I'll find somebody that I can complain to about it. So.
Yeah, I think small talk. I don't mind it. I have to do it with one of my jobs. I just got, my dad can talk anybody's ear off, so that's why I just see that.
That is true.
Yeah.
You're gonna hate mine.
All right, let's hear it.
Robes.
You hate them, but you wish you loved.
Why do you wish you loved robes?
Because they symbolize comfy.
What's wrong with you, man?
I don't know, a lot.
Jeez.
It always turns into a roast of
Who wears a robe?
I don't know. I just never could find one that fit.
Man.
You come to like the top or the middle of your thigh.
Yeah.
That would be like the flip of that. One thing that you love but wished you hated would be robe. Like if you still wore a robe.
It's applicable for both.
All right, so I have my answer for this, and I think I'd grow sick of it soon. But if you were stuck in an elevator and you were forced to listen to only one song, what would that be?
Man.
Mine's an ode to the 2015 Hawks.
Work remix?
No, Talking Body. Just repeat. Repeat in the elevator too.
Yeah, that would take about 3 times.
Yep.
And I would, yep. Sheesh. There's so many good answers for this one, but I'd get sick of them all.
Body by Loud Luxury.
No, believe it or not.
Rippin' Type of Party.
Yeah,
Hear your name.
Shout out Von Cruz.
Yeah,
Rippin' Type of Party. There we go.
All right, I like that.
I'll come up with one while you guys are answering here because I need to actually think of one.
I think it would be ironic and just annoying at the point, like after the first time, Little More Time by Mike. It'd get kind of, the name would just, I love the song a lot, right? But you'd hear it and you're just like, well, I got all I have is
little
time.
More Time.
Yeah, I'd get pretty pissed.
Box's answer just inspired me. I know what I'm picking.
All right.
Ironic by Alanis Morissette.
Okay. It is.
No explanation needed.
No.
I love like the ends of these episodes. We like start, you know, we get into some good stuff about, you know, life and everything, and then it just turns into a roast of Austin
and nonsense. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you excited? Spring training games start tomorrow, right? I think. I believe so. 28th.
Yeah, something like that.
Do they really already?
Yeah.
What the heck, man?
I know it's creeping up.
Well, I asked Patty before we got on about like a certain trade that happened with our favorite team, and just how disappointed we were, in general, just the whole thing. And like we can talk about it for a Milwaukee native like you, Ben, the changing of Miller Park, the name to American Family Field. That's just I don't know. It's never gonna sit well with me. I'm always gonna call it Miller Park. I don't know.
Isn't it American Family Insurance Park?
It's
I thought it was
AmFam Field.
Yeah,
American Family
Am
Field.
Field.
Yeah.
Well, that's the abbreviated version. But yeah, I saw a picture on Twitter about the. I saw the sign and it was changing and.
Not good.
Like the big one
Yeah.
out front.
Yeah, they took
Yeah.
the big one down.
The pit in my stomach, you know, it's big.
It's just some
That
of those
feels
things that you
wrong
don't.
to me.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
change it. Like, Patty, I think you and I can kind of get behind this. If they ever were to change Wrigley Field,
That's never
change my
happening.
fan-
but you know what I'm
my
saying.
league.
Like that would
Yeah, I
it
know.
would be a kind of revolutionary idea in a bad way. I think that there would be some bad heads would turn on that one. But
Well, what in the world are they doing changing Miller Park from a team called
Well,
the Brewers? Why would
American Family Insurance bought out the naming rights.
No, I mean I know that's literally, but why wouldn't you keep
No, I know.
Miller Park?
Yeah.
I understand how buying the naming rights for the stadium works. I do comprehend that.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's even when you search Miller Park, it redirects to American Family Field. At least American Family Insurance is based out of Madison. It's a Wisconsin
That's true.
company.
It's a Wisconsin company.
And it's not like they're cutting out all Miller products. Like you can't do that.
Yeah.
There'd be outrage.
But again, Patty, you raise a great point. How do you
Yeah.
stray away from having their location Miller Park, and they're the Milwaukee Brewers? That's
But,
kind of
I mean,
a big thing. But
especially being a smaller market team, that you're not gonna have the option to just name it Brewer Stadium, like Dodger
I
Stadium,
know.
let's say. So
No.
take the money
It's like-
when you can.
It's like guaranteed rate loan stadium or whatever on the south side of
right.
Chicago,
Yeah.
the White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
like Quicken Loans Arena.
That's one thing that we should talk about down the road when you come back on for a third time. History of ballparks. I'm reading a good book. I've been reading it since the summer, and now I have.
Is it called The History of Ballparks?
It's just called Ballpark.
Okay. I think I've read a book called The History of Ballparks.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the transition to the suburban age, and then things like Petco that put it back in the urban setting.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a foreshadowing to the next time you come on. I guess.
I got a sick picture of, I think it's 1918 Yankee Stadium on my wall over here in my kitchen.
Yeah.
Kind of a cool little picture.
I've always been fascinated by the history of it. It's just this like gathering place where city meets, the grass and dirt, and the book does a really good job of kind of elaborating on that image and what ballparks started as and how they progressed. And they turned into the big concrete donuts like the Astrodome and stuff. So
Astrodome, yeah. I think the Reds Park used to be like that too. You know what one blows my mind in terms of being in the middle of a suburb, not baseball, but Lambeau. Like you don't see another NFL stadium. That thing's in the middle of houses, man.
Yeah, you go down 2 blocks to park. Yeah.
So my analytical chemistry lab is on the 3rd floor of our science building, and it overlooks. You can literally see Lambeau Field, the G. So like that is the tallest building in a span of like 25. Oh, probably the span of all the way till Milwaukee.
Yeah.
It's like one of the taller buildings, and it's hilarious
stadium-wise,
because,
Lambeau's not really that big.
No.
It's not that big.
No,
compared
it's
to a lot
a
of
it's
other-
like a traditional dish kind of a style where it's just
a bowl.
yeah, bowl,
It's
yeah.
called a bowl.
Sorry. I can't. Let's
All right, episode 30.
Let's end it there. Patty, thanks again. Be sure to check or follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and check out our merch. It's in the bio of both of those things.
Yeah.
Thanks again for listening. Thank you to Patty. It's always fun.
Thanks for having me, boys. It was fun.
Bye.
Dominoes?
Maybe.